In this video, I'm going to show how I use OneNote to teach German GCSE. This video is aimed at people who are maybe just starting to use OneNote and just want to see an example. So it's nothing special or exciting. It's just a kind of a standard example of my lessons, just so you can see what different things you can integrate into it. Okay, so I've copied the pages over into my example OneNote book, so there won't be any student names in here. So here's my first example. So I've done this recently with my GCSE class, and so the nice thing about OneNote is that you can integrate lots of links and lots of worksheets, and your page is completely unlimited to any sites. You can have it next to each other, underneath each other, and so on. So in this lesson, I would start with a start activity, which is on Flippity. So this is really more the link for me. So I often put links in that I'm going to use, but they could also be used by students who maybe missed the lesson or who get kicked out halfway through because of internet problems. So at least then they can see what we've done. So in this case, I've got a start activity, which looks like this. It's a little quiz game where they have to do a translation task, and it's based on the retrieval roulette, which is in a different video, so it mixes old and new vocab together. So once we've done this together as a class on our video call, I then want them to practice the new vocabulary, which in this case is all about booking a hotel room. So I've created a Textivate challenge. For Textivate, you do need a subscription, which we have in our school, but you could also use something like Quizlet, obviously, for them to practice the vocab. So as you can see, each activity starts with a short title, so the students know what kind of task is coming, and I just use these preset titles over here, which is quite handy. So I don't need to worry about changing the color and so on. I can just highlight it and click heading to turn it into heading or back into normal. And that way it's quite easy for the students to see where one starts. I'm giving them all their usernames and so on again, and the link to the activity. So I would pause the call and at that point, or I would just mute myself, mute the students, and tell them you've got 10 minutes to do this vocab learning task. In that time, I can then go on to Textivate, and there it will show me which task each student is on and what percentage they've got. Okay, then I would call them all back together, back onto the call, and just talk them through the vocab. So here we've got our sentence builder. Some of it is the same as in the task they've just done, so they should recognize it, but there's a little bit of interesting grammar here with relative clauses. So I would maybe just explain it to them, give a few examples for them to translate into English and then into German to see that they've understood it. And then I would give them time on their own again to do this translation task over here, which is using exactly the vocab from the sentence builder. I could also then put them into breakout rooms, which means they get put into small groups of maybe 3 or 4 students, and they can talk to each other without the teacher necessarily hearing what they're doing. I mean, I can go into the breakout rooms and listen to them if I want to, check on them, but it just gives them a little bit more freedom to maybe ask some kind of stupid questions which they don't want to ask in front of the teacher or in front of the class, and they can just help each other a little bit. Okay, so then because this translation task here is just copied and pasted, they can just write into it. So they could just go equal and then write their answers there, or if they have a pen to write on a touch screen, then they could just handwrite the answers next to it and just number them 1 to 7. That is the nice thing about OneNote, that the page is unlimited, so they can take up as much space as they want over here, and they can go all the way over there and just take it up. Or they can even, any student can just take this box and move it around if they want to do that. So if they find it annoying that's kind of halfway overlapping this worksheet, they could put it over here and then write underneath it to have more space. They could also write on a piece of paper and then take a picture of it go to insert and then insert picture there, and then show me what they've done on paper. Okay, so after the worksheet, I've got another worksheet. This time it's linked to a Lingoscope listening task. So I would call them all back together again, maybe go through the answers of the translation task and then tell them to do the listening task. In this case, I did the listening task as a whole group activity. So I played it through my Teams call and they had to listen to it. But some of the students had connection problems on that day and couldn't really hear me properly. So for them, I put the transcript onto their page. So this is quite useful that you can modify each page for each student individually. So for most of the students, they only had the task over here, and the 2 students who had problems, they also had the transcript. So it's an easy way to do differentiation. And I even just put this on there while they were working on the translation task before, because before the lesson I didn't know that they would have problems. So, but because it all syncs at the same time, they probably didn't even notice that this suddenly appeared on their page. Okay, and then this actually took a whole lesson, but I had already planned some more work, which was a reading task here from TripAdvisor. Here I've copied on to another task. This is actually from an older lesson with the same class, just to show when I do listening tasks from the textbook, so in the Caboodle textbook in this case, I put myself this link there, which is really useful. So both on Active Learn and on Caboodle, you can share the links, and in this case it would be accessible by the students, so if they miss the lesson they can still do it, and it's also accessible by me. So even though I had planned to play the listening on the call, I put the link there just to make it quicker and smoother to get to the next task, so I don't have to first go into Caboodle and find the right page and so on. So it's just a quick shortcut. Okay, then you might have noticed that this page has this German frame there. This is a template I've created, so I've just typed in German pattern or something like that and created this little border on PowerPoint, and I copied it into an empty page as a picture. And then if you right click on it, you can set it as background, which then means it doesn't interfere with anything else, so you can just move things on top. And once you've got an empty page, so it looks like this, I can now right click and set as default template, which means now any new page I create will have this background here. So it's just a nice way of making it look a bit pretty. As some people like to have rule lines on their pages, so if you've got a lot of students who handwrite on there, then you might want to add that as well. Okay, another example which I did with this class during the last lockdown was this one. So this was based a lot on listening and speaking tasks, which I wanted them to do themselves. So I didn't want to do it in the team call because it takes quite a long time for each student to have a go at speaking. So instead I made them record it. And also because I really wanted them to focus on a specific sound, I did a recording of it because I thought the recording would be easier to hear than a video call. So in this case, I'm showing you the page of a student after he had worked on it. So they had to listen to this sound file which I created. So I just went to insert audio. So at the moment I can't do it because I'm already in an audio call, but normally you can just click anywhere on the page, record audio, and then I just read out this kind of tongue twister, and the students had to highlight the different sounds there. And I then made them read out the same text as well, and they had to record it. So I gave them a really clear place where to put their recording, because otherwise they often put them anywhere on their page or they send them by email and you end up with lots of different recordings everywhere. So it's good to tell them that they have to click into the page and then they can record in there. And here I can actually see the student has recorded it 3 times. So that's why it's showing me that he's at what times he started the video recording. But he's deleted 2 of them, but he's forgotten to delete the kind of subtitle there, the description of it, which is actually quite interesting for me to see that he spent 2 minutes recording 3 different versions. And then I can now just play his recording there as many times as I want, and I can give him feedback on it. Yeah, so this is an easy way of adding a speaking task in there as well. Okay, then here's another example. So sometimes I present my lessons directly from OneNote. So I use the OneNote instead of a PowerPoint, basically. But sometimes it is better to have a PowerPoint, because it's a bit clearer, it's easier to make sure that the writing is big enough and so on. So if I want to use a PowerPoint that I've already made maybe the year before, my trick is to put a link to the PowerPoint at the top of the OneNote page, because it just makes it much easier for me at the beginning of the lesson to quickly open this PowerPoint. And it also means that next year, if I'm using the same OneNote page again, I will remember which PowerPoint went with this page, because I'm not necessarily very good at always having the same title with the same PowerPoint name. The same PowerPoint, I've also printed one of the slides down here. So that's the slide that has the task on it. So I've just made a print out of it. And you just do that by going into the PowerPoint, going to File and Print, as if you want to send it to a real printer, but instead of your real printer you choose OneNote for Windows 10, and it will then print a slide on here, and it means the students can write on it, highlight it, and so on. So this is the example there. And the same with a Lingoscope worksheet here, which I've put onto the page. My sentence builder. Here is also a nice little idea. So the students have to read this text and match up the titles. So I've put each of the titles into a separate text box, and this is important because it now means they can grab this gray box at the top and drag it into the right place. So in this case, they need to match it up with the paragraphs, so they can match it over there. It could obviously also be a match up words with pictures and so on. Here's another little idea I quite like for differentiation, is using the draw tool. So in this case, I wanted them to revise the days of the week, but some of the students are a bit weaker and can't quite remember them as well as others. But I didn't just want to give them the whole vocab list, because that would make it too easy. So instead, I did give them the vocab list, but I scribbled it out. And then this way they can see the first letters, which might help them to remember which the days of the weeks are. But also, if they're really stuck, they can use the eraser in the draw tools and just erase some of the black and then look at the words. But this way, it means they can just delete the ones that they need, and they might still feel quite proud of themselves that they remembered, oh, Mittwoch was Wednesday, so they don't need to rub this. It's just a nice little way of making them feel more in control of how much help they want.